Yeah. Wait. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد. So we stopped last week and we did half of the sunnah, half of the recommended actions in the salat. And we stopped on page 249. There you go. We stopped on page 249 in the translation. And of course, this is the last of the categories regarding the actions or the statements of the salat. We finished the pillars, we finished the obligations, and the last section is the sunan, the recommended section. So, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start tonight with number 9, which is at the bottom of 249, where it says the Sheikh said, sitting. قال رحمه الله جلوس المصلي على رجله اليسرى مفروشة والنصب اليمنى في التشهد الأول وبين السجدتين. Now this is a description of how to sit in the salat when we're sitting on the ground for the tashahhud. When we're sitting for the tashahhud, how should we sit? And a lot of questions, a lot of times people say they have problems bending the toes or sitting on the legs, so people sit different ways. And the assumption is, I'm assuming people sit and they do what's comfortable for them. But there is a recommended way to sit, which is the way that the Prophet ﷺ sat in the salat. And they have a few different names, or 2 different names. So this first one, as he says, mafrusha. This is the description. It's difficult. When you sit on your left leg is on the ground, right? The right leg is propped up, sort of, with the toes under, right? The left leg is on the ground, and the right leg is propped up with the toes facing towards the qibla. So the toes are bent on the right foot. A person not necessarily sitting on the right foot. Now, we're not talking about how people sit, y'all, because people sit a whole lot of ways. Some people sit on both of their heels. Some people sit all kinds of ways. We're talking about what's the sunnah. The sunnah to sit is in one position, which is number 9, is to sit on, number 1, that the left leg, the shin part, as we say, is laid against the ground, and we sit on top of that. We sit on the back of our left leg, and then the right leg has the toes pointed towards the qibla. This is to be done, as he says, this is to be done in the first tashahhud, meaning it's recommended to sit like this in the first tashahhud, and there's a different way we should sit in the second tashahhud. طيب. The first tashahhud also, as he says, بين السجدتين, between the 2 sajdas. The left foot with the feet, as it says, with the feet erect. The right foot erect, meaning the right foot is standing up. Based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that on the hadith of Aisha, كان يفرش رجله اليسرى وينصب اليمنى, that he would lay his left foot down and hold the right foot upright, that position that we may see a lot. If we don't know the name of it, mafrusha, that description is described as being mafrusha. And he describes why it is called mafrusha. And he says, as the left leg in this case, iftirash. The left leg is as if you put a rug down on the ground and you use your left leg for a rug and you sit on top of it. طيب. Everybody clear? طيب. مفروشة. أيوة. مفروشة. That's one way to sit. That's one recommended way to sit. The second way to sit is actually number 10. Abu Ayyub. That's hot. I don't know if it's just in case your son run over there. All right. The second way to sit is actually number 10. The 10th sunan. The 10th recommended action in the salat. Tell you what happens, y'all, if we don't sit like this. We lose out on the reward of sitting like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the way the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sat in the salat. So what happens to the salat of the person who doesn't sit the way the Messenger Alayhi Wasallam sat when he was making tashahhud? Huh? The salat is still valid. But a person loses the reward of not following the sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in that action. Jayid. Which means when we see people, and we got to say it because that's how some of us are. When we see the imam not doing this sunnah, it doesn't call for us to say we are not going to pray behind that imam anymore. It's not enough for us to say because the imam didn't sit on his left leg with his right and his toes weren't pointed, he didn't do the sunnah the way he sat. I'm not praying behind him. He's not on the sunnah, or he didn't do the next description. That means the imam is not on the sunnah. Why would a person not sit like this, y'all? Knowing it's the sunnah, if a person knows it's the sunnah, and we're supposed to pray the way the Prophet ﷺ prayed, why would a person intentionally not pray like this? Medical reasons. Maybe a person got medical reasons. They're not able to physically do it. And those are excuses we need to have for each other. Maybe the brother can't sit, or maybe the sister can't. She just can't do it. That literally happened to me. I got like, my daughter laughing out about that. Allah Mustaan. Allah Mustaan. That's part of having husnul dhan for your brother or your sister, having good thoughts about your brother or your sister. You know the person is, number one, if they're here praying, if they're with you praying, they're trying to do some type of good. Maybe they don't even know how to sit like that. Maybe they don't know that this is from the sunnah, possibly. If he does know it's from the sunnah, so he's saying he knows it's from the sunnah and he still doesn't do it, at that point we should be making another excuse for each other. Maybe something's going on. Physically, they're not able to do it. Or maybe I know the person. No, he can physically do it. Or maybe he has another issue. It could be something else, right? At the end of the day, it's not something that is enough for us to, as we say, go too far in critiquing and criticizing without knowing the real issue behind why a person is not doing something that is recommended. Tayyib. That's the first description of sitting in the salat. The second description of sitting in the salat is number 10. التورك في التشهد الأخير في الرباعية والثلاثية, which is another way of sitting, but in this sitting, let me see how you translated this. Okay. طيب. It says which is to sit on the buttocks while placing the left foot under the right foot with the right foot erect. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Right? Sometimes we see people praying when they're sitting down and they're sitting and it looks like they're leaning all the way to the left. Right? It looks like they're sitting on the butt. Right? And they're leaning all the way to the left, and the left foot is like cupped under the right foot. They're not just doing that just for something to do in the salat. People might know. Right? That's from the sunnah. It's called at-tawarruk. At-tawarruk. That's the name of that position of sitting like that. And when should this be done? This should be done, as he says, in the last tashahhud for ruba'iyya. If it's 4 rak'ah, if the salat is 4 rak'ah, dhuhr, asr, isha, in the last tashahhud. What's the hukum on the last tashahhud, y'all? Where does the last tashahhud fall in the categories? Pillars, obligation, or recommended? Huh? اختلف الأصحاب. Somebody says wajib, somebody says pillar. It's from the arkan. The last one is from the arkan. What about the first tashahhud? From the wajibat, from the obligations. Tayyib. In the last one, we should be sitting, or right, we should be sitting. We can say that we should be sitting. What's understood by should be though? What does should be mean Islamically? Hmm? طيب. Yes. If we say to somebody, you should be sitting like this, or you should be doing something, what meaning does that carry in English?
Maybe that's the best position to sit.
Maybe that's the best position to sit.
You don't
Could should be in the English language. Could should be carry the meaning of like obligatory. It can depend on the context. That's the problem. When we say stuff like you should do something, it that's not really specific enough. It needs to be specified. What do you mean I should do it? I should do it like if I don't do it, my action is not accepted, or I should do it like it's a better thing to do. You understand? In this case, the better way to sit is a tawarruk in the fourth rak'ah. In the fourth rak'ah, at the end of the salat, the last tashahhud. Even if it's salat al-maghrib, then which rak'ah are we talking about? The third rak'ah if it's salat al-maghrib. But if it's a four rak'ah salat, then at the end of those, the four rak'ah, right before the taslim, we should try our best to sit the way the Prophet ﷺ said, which is that to sit on towards the left. If you ever see somebody, a sister or a brother, they're leaning to the left and it looks like they're sitting on their butt. They're not necessarily sitting on their leg, and the leg is tucked up under the right side, the right leg. This is a tawarruk. He says, based on the hadith of Abi Humayd radiallahu anhu fil Bukhari. وفيه وقعد على مقعدته. It says in that hadith, and he sat on his maq'ad, which is a buttocks, in that position. طيب. They say that he used, it's called tawarruk because the person sits like literally, they're sitting like towards that hip bone cheek, like the buttock. And it's named after that. And the other one, the first position is, as it says, افتراش لأنه يجعل رجله اليسرى مثل الفراش له يجلس عليها. The first position, a person sits on their leg, right? So they basically named it after what it would possibly look like, how it could possibly look like. A person used their leg as if it was a rug, right? It's the same way you sit on a rug, meaning. And the other, so they call the first one is if you're sitting on a rug, you're sitting on your leg. And the second one, when you're sitting on like your buttock, right? They named it after that, the position itself. That's what it's referred to. The position is referred to, yes.
Is it referred to these positions by all of the like fuqaha? Like
What category it falls in, but the name itself is known. طيب. The next sunnah, which is sunnah number 11. Sunnah number 11. And some of these are statements and some of them are actions. He says, Al-ishara bis-sababa fi at-tashahhud al-awwal wal-thani min hin yajlis ila nihayat at-tashahhud wa tahrikuha 'inda ad-du'a. He says that the pointing of the finger in the first tashahhud and in the last tashahhud. In the first tashahhud and the last tashahhud, from the time a person sits until the end of the tashahhud, and that they should move the finger when they are making dua. That the person should be moving the finger when they are making dua, and that is on page 250. Pointing of the index finger in the first and second tashahhud, from the sitting to the end of the tashahhud, to move it when supplicating. Tayyib. This is an issue, not the issue of pointing. The issue of moving is another issue that is spoken about. That's why he specified here, rahimahullah, to move the finger when making dua. In the ulama, they do get specific on exactly when a person should move a finger. He didn't mention it here. He left it general in the dua. Some have said every time you say Allah's name that you should point the finger. Right? And there are different statements regarding the pointing of the finger, but what we do know is the pointing of the finger should be done during the tashahhud. طيب, clear? Pointing of the finger is one thing, y'all. How to point the finger, how to move it, or the movement of the finger, how fast to move it, how slow to move, when to move it. That's a discussion in itself. That's a discussion in itself. طيب. And just for clarity purpose, the pointing is the index finger. The index finger, not any finger. طيب. You'd be surprised. You know? Sometimes we assume everybody knows, right? But it's exactly that. It's an assumption. طيب. Number 12. The 12th sunnah. The 12th thing that is recommended. He says, As-salatu wa tabrik ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ala Ibrahim wa ali Ibrahim fi tashahhud al-awwal. Did he already discuss this? Is this the first time we spoke about this? He said it's recommended to do what? Since salam, salat, and on the Prophet sallallahu and his family, and on Ibrahim and the family of Ibrahim, when during the first tashahhud. Is everybody clear?
Yeah. During the first tashahhud?
Yeah. That's what he said. Where does the first tashahhud generally stop? When we do the first tashahhud, we pray 2 rak'ah for Dhuhr or Isha, and then we stop at the shahadatain. At-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibatu wa salamu alayka ya nabi wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan rasulullah. We stop there, and then we do what? Allah will stand up for the 3rd rak'ah. What is he saying? He's saying that a person in the first tashahhud that they send salam on the Prophet sallallahu, meaning they continue. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. Kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ali Ibrahim innaka hamidun majid. In the first tashahhud. That is what? Recommended. Do most people do that? Huh?
Basically, the first one is the last shahad. As far as what's recommended.
That's a good question. Say it again.
As far as first and second shahad, the shahad, as far as what's recommended, the same.
That's bad wording.
Yeah. Basically, so you basically say, I know in the last shahad it's obligatory, but what's obligatory in the last shahad is recommended in the first shahad.
That's better, but you still gotta narrow it down. If you leave it like that, that's not really you on the right path, though. It's something from the last tashahhud. Something from the last tashahhud that is not obligatory. It's a pillar. It's a pillar in the last tashahhud, and in the first tashahhud is recommended. Right? It's a pillar in the last tashahhud, and then the first tashahhud is recommended.
I don't remember it mentioning being a pillar in the I remember that's a being a pillar.
Sahih, sahih. So what's the hukum on the salat of Ibrahim?
It's recommended in both of them.
Is it recommended in the first tashahhud?
I always read that it was recommended in the last tashahhud. This is my first time told.
It's recommended in both, but you have to do it.
Jayid. Yes.
So, when I first became a Muslim,
What year was that, Sheikh? It's important we know.
1975.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
The Sheikh was probably before me.
Allahu Akbar.
MashaAllah. So anyway, back then, we didn't have any books, first of all. And every book I read said that it's only done in the last tashahhud.
Jayid.
Until I got that book from Sheikh Nasruddin Al-Albani, the Prophet's Great Scribe,
Yes.
and things changed.
Allahu Akbar.
You know what I mean?
Allahu Akbar.
MashaAllah.
Tayyib. Tayyib. So what was he saying now? In the first tashahhud, this here, what does this mean right here? Let's deal with this first. This is on page 250 at the bottom, page 250. Invoking prayers and blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, upon Ibrahim and upon Ibrahim and the family of Ibrahim. When do we usually say that? In the last tashahhud. What does this mean right here when we're talking about number 12? He's saying it is recommended to say that also in the first tashahhud. What happens if a person doesn't say it in the first tashahhud? What happens to the salat? Salat is valid. No problem if a person doesn't say it. Now, my question was, do people generally say that part in the first tashahhud? No. How do we know that?
Well, one of the indications is they also got no effect.
I tell you. That's the only indication we have, is that it's usually not as long as the last one. And so we assume that a person didn't do that, right? This is an assumption. It's a possibility that the brother or the sister is reading fast enough, right, that they do it. Because sometimes you pray behind people and their first tashahhud is a little longer than usual, but that's not the norm. Most people, the second tashahhud is definitely longer than the first, right? And of course, we wouldn't really know if they did it unless you really asked the person. But that was from the statements that are considered, that are sunnah. Sunnah. That's something that's recommended to say. Some of these things are recommended to do, and some of them are recommended to say. طيب. Number 13, الدعاء في التشهد الأخير. الدعاء في التشهد الأخير. Which is a statement or action? A statement. As he said, فيه ثم يتخير بعد من الدعاء ما شاء. And he spoke about this earlier. That same dua, that at the end of the tashahhud is not a time that we rush out and just finish the salat real quick. This is a place for dua. So we need to make sure that we're utilizing and taking advantage of all of our time. What happens if a person only does the salat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the tashahhud and the salat of Ibrahim, and after that they don't do any dua? They don't seek refuge from the four in the grave. They don't make dua after any of that. What generally happens to the salat? And what? The salat is decreased. The reward is a little less. Why? Because a person left off some things that are recommended. Tell you what else happens to the salat? It finishes a little faster, right? These are real things, so that we don't pray behind people. And when he prayed all fast, well, okay, it's possible. It's possible that he didn't do something. Why would he not do it? Well, he's the imam. The imam is responsible, y'all. The imam is responsible for the people following the salat and the people following. Anything could be going on. That's not the responsibility of the people following the imam. It's the responsibility of whoever's leading the salat. Whoever's leading the salat, brothers, is the imam. It's your responsibility to make sure you pray a salat that is complete as possible without putting a hardship on the people behind you. Brothers, it's our responsibility to pray a complete prayer without putting a hardship on the people that are following us if we're leading the salat. Which takes awareness. You got to be aware of what does the imam need to be aware of? People's condition. What else? The people that are behind them. You have to understand who's behind you. Meaning, it's good to know the imam. It don't have to be a broadcast, but it's good to know the imam needs to know if it's women, if there's women following. It's just good to know. We can't just be lawful walking around like, we don't know what's going on. It doesn't mean we have to make a broadcast about it, but you need to be aware. If there's women there, then there's possibly what? There's possibly children. There's possibly a pregnant woman there. It's possible that people are moving around. Who else could be there that's possibly not in a rush, but have things to do? Who else could possibly be behind the imam and they have things to do?
Person got to get back to work.
Person got to go back to work. All of that stuff is on the imam. The imam has to be conscious and paying attention. And you're not in your house at this point, and you're gonna recite and practice your surahs. I'm just saying. Not right now. Not like, you know what I'm saying? Saajid, it's not the time to practice. The time to practice is when? When you're at home. When at home though?
Actually, outside of the salat.
Huh? The night prayer. Qiyam al-layl. Get up and practice at night. Don't practice with the people, and then you put people on the heart. You put people in a tight condition. Brother has to go to work. She has a baby. She's pregnant. He can't stand that long, and you put everybody in a tight predicament because. Allah Mustaan. Allah Mustaan. Yes.
So do you just assume you automatically resort to shortening the prayer? Just to be safe, or
you should be aware.
I had a scenario where I was in Saajid for I wouldn't say lengthy time, but it was lengthy for my father. After the salah, he said, "Yo, next time don't be in Saajid for so long. I'm old."
Okay.
I was like, I ain't even. I would think, okay, standing up, cool, I get that. But it's Saajid, I ain't even.
You didn't know what?
I didn't know that would be a hardship.
Well, how old are you?
Young.
23.
MashaAllah. How old is your father?
67.
Wow. It's different, man. It's different. That's a difference. Tell you, it's a big difference. Yeah, I'm you can ask. I'm saying, Sheikh, you here. I'm a little older than you. It's different. It's different.
What I'm saying was the eye opener, as far as like, it's not just standing up, it's the whole life.
Yes, no doubt.
So that's what I'm saying. You just assume and you just be safe on the safe side.
You want to pray perfect. You want to pray a complete prayer, and at the same time, you want to give people ease. Right? So you have to be there is, right? You know your father, for example. If it's your father, you know your father. You know how your father generally prays. Right? So you might not say, in your brain, you might say, okay, I know I have to say the dhikr one time, but I know your father can handle more than one. So you might go and say, okay, I'll do it 3. But you know your father, maybe he can go a little long. What he generally prays, right? But that's a person you know. So people you don't know how long they can stay in ruku'. You don't know how long they can stay in sujood. You don't know how long they can stand behind you while you're reciting, right? So it's not necessary to make the salat short, but just to be mindful of who's there. That's all. You have to be mindful of who's there. And then you have to, it's a judgment call. Ultimately, it's a judgment call on the imam. He's going to make a judgment call, and he's going to do what he thinks is right for the situation.
Is there a time where the imam, like, he ignores judgment of the few to satisfy the judgment of the many? For example, let's say you're leading an entire masjid in salah for tarawih, and this pregnant woman and this kids running around, how it typically goes during Ramadan. It's kids in there, women of all types. Is there a time, like, let's say he hears a baby crying, would he in that case continue the prayer for the majority, the people who came there for the ibadah, and ignore like the minority in that situation?
Which prayer is it? Well, in Salat al-Tarawih, that's a specific situation. Most people know Salat al-Tarawih is going to be long. So the people who come for Salat al-Tarawih need to be prepared to adjust to the length. We're not going to shorten Salat al-Tarawih. You understand what I'm saying? Number one, Salat al-Tarawih is not obligatory. Right? It's recommended. It's a sunnah. So if the person can't stand that long, right? If the person can't stay in sujood, it's known that prayer itself is long. So in that case, it's a different situation. That's really for the person who's coming to pray to make that judgment for themselves. Person not going to adjust the prayer that's supposed to be long and make it short because you understand what I'm saying? There's a few people who can't deal with it. And on top of that, it's not a prayer that is obligatory for that person to pray anyway. So in that type of situation is one thing. But a general 5 daily prayer salat is a little different. You with me? طيب. He says, number 13 was the dua fi tashahhud al-akhir, making dua before we make the taslim. So it's recommended that we are making dua. And if we don't know any duas to say, so plenty to say. We have a whole book of duas in the Fortress of the Muslim that the author, rahimahullah, gathered. We should be using that, inshallah. طيب. Number 14, al-jahru bil-qira'ah fi salat al-fajr wa salat al-jum'ah wa salat al-eidain wa al-istisqa wa fi rak'atayn al-awwalayn min salat al-maghrib wa al-isha. طيب. To recite loudly that a person can hear, to recite out loud, is recommended when this is in the middle of 251. For Fajr, for Salatul Fajr, is recommended to recite aloud. طيب. For Jumu'ah also, recommended to recite aloud. For the Eid, the two Eid prayers, recommended to recite aloud. The rain prayer. Has anybody ever prayed the rain prayer here? The rain prayer, Salatul Istisqa. Does everybody know what the rain prayer is? Anybody don't know what the rain prayer is? You know the rain? Everybody knows the rain prayer? What's the rain prayer? Jade. Praying for rain. Sahih. طيب. Why would the people pray for rain? Allah Akbar. That's my point. We might not feel the need for it because sometimes we get rain 3-4 days at a time. But you go to some places, y'all don't rain, might not rain all year. It might rain in a year. In Mecca, it used to rain for like all year. It might rain like 10 minutes in a year. In 2 years, it wouldn't even rain for an hour in 2 years, possibly. 2 years is no rain. It wouldn't rain for the length of an hour. Right? And then the longer it goes on, then we might not see it as a problem, but that's a problem. That's a problem. Rain is a ni'mah from Allah. And when it doesn't rain like that, Islam, alhamdulillah, Islam is, alhamdulillah, we have a prayer for rain. That we pray that Allah gives us beneficial rain. Because without it, it causes problems. So we might not see the importance of it, but Salatul Istisqa is important. That we read aloud in Salatul Istisqa, the rain prayer. In the first 2 rak'ah for Maghrib and Isha. Tayyib, what does that mean? If a person doesn't read out loud in these places, what happens to the salah?
He loses the barakah from not reciting out loud, but he doesn't have to correct it.
Exactly. So it's possible, like the Shaykh Hafidhullah mentioned, for example, it's possible that a person is reciting for Salat al-Fajr or Salat al-Maghrib or any prayer that's supposed to be out loud, right? In those first 2 rak'ah. So possibly he's reading Salat al-Fajr and he's not reciting out loud. Maybe he forgot. And the person behind corrects him, or they say subhanAllah, something. They remind him, they alert him that he's not reading out loud, right? So he starts to read out loud when they remind him. Tahiyat, is that okay? Should he go back? Should he start over? Is a salat okay? How we deal with that? Because Qira'at al-Fatiha is what? Reciting al-Fatiha on the salat is what? A pillar. A pillar. Tayyib. So what happens? He read half of al-Fatiha and nobody heard him. He gets all the way to Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim and somebody alerts him and he says, Ihdina Sirat, and he starts reading out loud. That's no problem. Why is that not a problem?
Because the Imam was reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. They were following behind him.
Was he reciting?
He was reciting. They couldn't hear him.
Jade. He was reciting al-Fatiha, but they didn't hear him. What is the pillar of the salat to do what? Recite al-Fatiha. The recitation of al-Fatiha is the pillar, the rukn. To recite it out loud so everybody can hear is what? The sunnah. Therefore, if a person did that, and that doesn't mean, y'all, we should be intentionally like trying to test people in the salat or making it into some type of trivial thing. But sometimes it happens, a person forgets, right? And if a person did forget, it's a way to fix it. Do they have to go back? Some people say, when some people make a mistake in the salat, they say, man, I just started over. I ain't know what to do, right? They just start over. You might be in the 4th rak'ah. Now you do something, you just, I'm gonna just start over, right? When that's not necessarily the case all the time. You might not have to start. A person might alert him and then he begins. And that's why he says, if that happens, he says, فَلَا يُعِيدُ الْفَاتِحَةَ مِنْ أَوَّلِهَا. And he doesn't have to go back and recite al-Fatiha from the beginning. He says, وَإِنَّمَا يُكْمِلُ مِنْ حَيْثِ انْتَهَى إِلَيْهِ الْقِرَاءَةُ. He just completes where he left off reciting, even if they couldn't hear him. Why? Because it is not, and he says here, لِأَنَّهُ لَا يُشْرَعْ قِرَاءَةُ أَوَّلِ الْفَاتِحَةِ مَرَّتَيْنِ. It is not legislated to read the beginning of al-Fatiha twice in one salat. So you don't read half of the al-Fatiha, which he did read it. Did he read it? But it wasn't what? It just wasn't loud. So it's not for us to read the first part of Al-Fatiha twice in the prayer. So he says he can keep going and complete the rest of it out loud. Clear? Yes.
Why is it a scenario where it throws him off? I don't know where. Then does he go back?
Jade. What happens if he gets confused? Somebody alerted him that he wasn't allowed, and now he's standing there like, what should he do?
Has he completed Al-Fatiha?
La, he's at Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. And then somebody says, SubhanAllah. He's like, man, what should he do?
Wherever you know you recite.
Everybody understand the question? He wasn't reciting that Fatiha out loud, and he was supposed to be, right? For Salat al-Fajr. Once he gets to Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, somebody alerts him that he was reciting quietly. He said, man, I'm not reciting. So now he's confused. He doesn't have to do what? What doesn't he have to do? He doesn't have to start back over. Can he start back over?
He can.
Can he start back over?
He can because he didn't finish Al-Fatiha. So it's not like reciting it twice.
All we going off is what's in front of us right now. Tayyib. He says what? He says, oh, it's not even in here. I'm sorry, it's okay. He says, if he recites half of Al-Fatiha silently and is then alerted and begins to recite out loud, he does not start over from the beginning. All right. He says, rather, he completes his recitation because it is not prescribed to recite Al-Fatiha twice. Clear? Tayyib. Let's go on that. Let's go. So now, go ahead, Sheikh. I'll let you go first.
Okay, but he's confused.
Tayyib.
You don't know where you stopped.
Good.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So he's like jammed up, and a lot of people, unfortunately, some of us, I used to be the same way. You get in the middle of the surah,
Mm-hmm.
you lost.
Right.
You ain't gonna be able to stop unless you come back.
Right.
But not just a Fatiha, but a lot of surah.
Right. No doubt.
You know what I'm saying? So this person, he might be Muslim maybe 2 years. He's never heard of Fatiha, so now he's shook. He jammed up.
Everybody see the difference? Is one thing if you know where you stopped at, and that's what the book is referring to. You know where you stopped at, and then somebody alerts you. So now you know, okay, I wasn't reading all that time, and I know where I'm getting ready to continue from. What if a person stops and they don't know where they at? The origin is that if you haven't completed it, you haven't done it. That's the origin. If you have not completed Al-Fatiha and you don't know if you completed it, the origin is you have not completed it. You can't just say, well, because if we don't know where we stop, basically what we're saying is, I think I stopped right here. I probably stop. I'm gonna just pick up from here. You can't do that with Al-Fatiha. It's a pillar. You need to make sure that the whole pillar is complete. If a person is confused, then they can go back and use what? Be sure. You want to be sure about what you recited. If a person is sure, they stopped at Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim or something like that. You know you stopped there, and that's where you're gonna pick up from. Then you don't have to go back. You keep going. Tayyib? You got to be sure. If you don't know where you stopped at and you're not sure, go back to where you're sure about. طيب. It says number 15 الإصرار بالقراءة في الظهر والعصر وفي الثالثة من المغرب. طيب. To recite silently in the last 2 rak'ah. I'm sorry. To recite silently in Dhuhr and Asr. Dhuhr, Asr is to be recited silent. What does this mean, y'all? Everybody get what this means? It's recommended to recite the Dhuhr silently, and to recite Asr silently, and to recite the 3rd rak'ah of Maghrib silently. Clear? In the last 2 rak'ah of Salat al-Isha, it's recommended to recite them silently. That's the sunnah. So what happens to the Salat? When a person, the Imam leaves the Salat and he starts to read Salat al-Maghrib, the 3rd rak'ah out loud. Huh? Is that a problem? Is that a problem?
being deducted, yeah.
All right, let me rephrase the question. A person reads the third rak'ah of Salat al-Maghrib out loud. Is that a problem?
It's not a problem, but it could be problematic. People come to the prayer late.
It'll be a problem as far as what being reduced.
I'll restate the question. Well, I'm not restating. I'll just say the question. This is a yes or no question. Is that a problem? That's a yes or no question. No.
Yes. That's a no.
I'm asking. I'm not. Don't forget me. I'm asking the question. I just want to know if it's a problem.
Yes, it's a problem.
It is. Y'all are
following the sunnah.
Yes, it's a problem. To recite the third rak'ah out loud is a problem. No doubt, hands down. Tayyib?
Yeah, but
There's a problem. That's number one.
But that's the problem with the person who understands that this is a sunnah. He's not leaving it intentionally.
No, regardless. Anybody who recites the third rak'ah of Maghrib out loud, that is a problem. Why is it a problem? He's not following the way the Prophet ﷺ taught us to pray out loud. Next, how does that affect the prayer is a different scenario. Whenever we go against the Prophet ﷺ, that's a problem. It's problematic for us. Why? Because the best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad ﷺ. He prayed in the third rak'ah of Maghrib was silent. For us to come and pray aloud is a problem. Is it enough of a problem to invalidate the prayer? That's a different question. You with me? But it's definitely a problem. No doubt, hands down, it's a problem. Why? Because we weren't taught to pray like that. But what happens if a person does that? That's another situation. Clear? طيب. He says also, وَالْجَهْرُ فِي مَوَاضِعِ الْجَهْرِ. وَالْجَهْرُ فِي الْمَوَاضِعِ الْجَهْرِ. Also, from the sunnah is to be loud in those areas where we are supposed to be loud. And to be silent in the areas where we are supposed to be silent. Clear? Huh? Where are some areas in the salat where we're supposed to be loud? The takbirat. What else? Sami Allahu liman hamida. What else? Salams at the end. Where else? The statement, Ameen, right? To be loud when we're supposed to be loud, and to be silent when we're supposed to be silent. Meaning, these things, y'all, there's no time we don't want to do them the right way. But sometimes, for example, you be in ruku' or you in sajda, and you can hear the brother or the sister next to you saying the dhikr of sajda. Subhanallah. And you can hear the whole dua they make. You might be able to hear the whole dua they're making, right? It's supposed to be silent, right? It's supposed to be silent. The fact that they said it out loud, do they have to pray over? No, they don't have to pray over, but it should be done silently. It should be done silently. And that's the point of the categories. These categories are not made for the fact of for us to look at them like they're not as important as the other, so I'm not going to do it. But they're there for if we make a mistake, if we do something, it's there so we know how to fix our salah if anything happens and we make a mistake. And we're human, so we do make mistakes. It says number 16, قراءة ما زاد عن الفاتحة من القرآن. He said this is from the sunnah of the salah, that al-Fatiha falls under what category? Recitation of al-Fatiha in the salah falls under the arkan, the pillars, which means if we don't recite al-Fatiha, then our salat is accepted or not? Valid or it's not even valid without al-Fatiha. What about the surahs we recite after al-Fatiha? This is what number 16 is referring to. Reading mazada, as he says, reciting other surah from the Quran besides al-Fatiha. Meaning after al-Fatiha, the Imam says, Ameen, right? And then the Imam reads another surah after that. That surah that he reads after that is recommended to do that. It's from the sunnah to read another surah after al-Fatiha. What if a person was, let's just say, mathalan, some people, real life situations, they work very high demanding jobs. right? They can't be away from their posts for long periods of time. Maybe they might get breaks throughout the day, but each break is 5 minutes. So they get 5 minutes, then later they get another 5. They can't be away from the post for 15, 20 minutes at a time, half hour at a time. So they got 5 minutes. How does a person pray like that? A person needs to understand what they're allowed to do and still have a complete prayer, and what they're not allowed to do. What can I not do and my prayer is still valid? And what can I do? You understand? So let's just say, for example, they were in that case and all they read was Al-Fatiha. So they said, then they said, Allahu Akbar. And they didn't read anything. And then they went into ruku'. Is that okay? Meaning, is the salat valid like that? Are they able to do that based on their situation? Yes. And even if that wasn't the situation, but we're just saying based on that situation, because we don't want to intentionally, no time we want to intentionally, like, I'm not going to do that. We should always try to do as many things from the sunnah as possible. But if that was the case and they had to pray like that, then alhamdulillah, they would have filled enough of the salat they would have done enough for the salat to be valid. Yes.
I don't want that. That's just the position of the author, right?
All of this is the position of the author.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Anything in here is the position of the author. I hope everybody understands that. Meaning you might pick up another book and they might not say that. They might say something else.
Yes.
Is it better to recite 1 or 2 ayat and then go into the report than to just leave off the whole entire second surah?
It depends.
Because I work in high intensity environments, like in the airport, where I found that reciting surah like Al-Kawthar, Asr, Ikhlas, those were my go-to surah when I had to make it quick.
Mm-hmm.
But I always found that better than just reciting Fatiha and going straight into the report and leaving it. Even if you gotta recite Alif Lam Mim Allahu Akbar.
No doubt. It's always better to follow the sunnah, no doubt. Not reciting anything after Al-Fatiha. I say we should look at that as something that's situational, right? It's situational. The sunnah is the better thing to do all the time, but it's situational, right? That example you're using, that's your demand for your job. What if somebody else's demand is higher? On top of that, whatever you recite from ayat, it needs to make sense. Meaning, you don't want to stop on the wrong verse. You don't want people to start just reciting half things and they stop and then the we say in English, the thought is not a complete thought. And they can give off the wrong type of meaning the way where you stop at. If you're able to do that with a complete meaning, alhamdulillah, that's always better, right? Because it's from the sunnah. If a person's not able to do that and they're in the jam, what you're safe is safe reading Al-Fatiha. You know you've done enough. Of course, you're not going to get the reward that you would get if you were praying home or you were out at the masjid and praying with the jama'ah and you were reading more. It may not be that, but you do what you can do in order to fulfill your obligations in that situation. Inshallah. Yes. Allahu A'lam. Shma'na Alif Lam Mim. Alif Lam Mim. Yeah. Allahu A'lam. Allahu A'lam.
Well, you have to have knowledge of al-waqf wal-ibtida and the ma'na of each surah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. If a person doesn't really know the meanings of what they're saying, it would be safer to stay away from reading halves, because you might, recite something that needs a further make a complete thought. Or a person might not know where to stop. You don't just stop anywhere. That's a whole science. It's a whole, you have to learn where to stop at when you're reciting. You don't just stop anywhere. Like, oh, I'm out of breath. I'm gonna just stop right here. So a person needs to know where to stop if they're going to do that. What if they don't know all of that? If they don't know all of that, then we know for sure that they have to recite Al-Fatiha. We know for sure they have to recite Al-Fatiha. And when we get home or we get to a more stable situation, then we can be comfortable and pray the way we want to pray and recite whatever we want to recite. So inshallah, that should be situational. After that, which is at the top of page 252. He says, so that right there was 16 different things that are recommended in the salah. He says, مع مراعاة بقية ما ورد في السنن من السنن من السنن في الصلاة السوى ما ذكرنا. He says, along with the other things from the sunnah that he didn't mention. He mentioned 16 things here. Some of the things we say, some of the things that we do. There are other things that he didn't mention that we still should be trying to practice, not just the ones that he mentioned here, these 16. And 16 is a lot, y'all. And there's more. There's more. He said, not just these 16. He says, the point of him saying that is to understand that the 16 that are mentioned here are just, as we say, ala sabil mithal. These are just examples of some of the things that are recommended to do. There are more things. And he moved on after that and mentioned a few more. He says, وَمِن ذَلِكَ, also what is also recommended, ما زاد على قول المصلي ربنا ولك الحمد بعد الرفع من الركوع في حق الإمام والمأموم والمنفرد فإنه سنة. Meaning, when a person comes up, we say, سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا ولك الحمد. Right? There are other du'as to say after ربنا ولك الحمد. Those du'as that come after we say ربنا ولك الحمد are from the sunnah. They're recommended to say. If a person doesn't know any, it's not going to invalidate their prayer, but at the least, what they could have gotten more reward by learning another dua to say in the salah, right? And again, there are many, and there's some they're short. A lot of these are short. A lot of these extra duas that we can say in the salah are short. They're like, as we say, kalimat, 3 or 4 words. Hamdan, kathiran, tayyiban, mubarakan fi. 4 or 5 words. We memorize foolishness because we hear foolishness every day, even if we're not even listening for the foolishness, right? So you might memorize the words to a commercial because every time you open up YouTube, for example, that same commercial pops up, right? The same commercial come on every time you open up YouTube. So you end up, what? Memorizing the commercial. Like the commercial has nothing to do with anything at all, right? You skip it, but you hear the commercial every day, you end up memorizing words. How more about if we listen to the right things throughout the day, then we should be memorizing things by hearing them. Allah mustaan. We have to be careful. We don't want these devices and phones and pads and tablets to be a proof against us, Yawm al-Qiyamah. That we're not using them for the proper things. Allahu A'lam. The hirs and the diligence and the seriousness of people, I think, Allahu A'lam. It might have been a little more serious when we had tapes. Right? Tape or pop. And we used to tape and pull the tape up and put scotch tape around it. That's how precious the tape was. You rewind it so much that it won't even play. Right? It won't even play anymore because you rewind the tape so much you gotta go get a pen or a pencil and turn the tape back, right? You keep turning the tape back and turning the tape back, but you had like, right? You had the love for now everything is like digital. Send it to me. Somebody send you a million things, you never even open them. Right? It's so easy. It's not really what's really pushing the person to really hold it and guard it and really have some love for it like that. It's so easy to get. You might not be able to, things on those tapes, you might not be able to get them again. You might have to, and that's not even anything near what the ulama and the salaf did to preserve the books, traveling to write the book down. Travel to another country to sit there for a month copying a book by hand to preserve a book. Allah musta'an. Anything said after that, the du'as that are said after Rabbana wa lakal hamd. So that would make, for example, in this case, number 17 from the recommended things to do. Number 17 is what? The du'a that we say after we come up in ruku' or after Rabbana wa lakal hamd. And then he says, وَمِن ذَلِكَ أَيْضًا, also from the sunnah. وَضَعُ الْيَدَيْنِ عَلَى الرُّكْبَتَيْنِ مُفَرَّجَتَيْ الْأَصَابِعِ حِينَ الرُّكُوعِ. To, when we go in the ruku', specifics now. To spread the fingers on the knees when we go in the ruku'. right? Not just putting the hands on the knees, but specifically to open the fingers, to spread the fingers open, which is the last one, as he says, the supplication. I'm sorry, that last paragraph, as well as placing the hands on the knees with the fingers spread while in ruku'. This is based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an Wa'il ibn Hajr, radiallahu anhu. Wa'il ibn Hujr, I'm sorry, radiallahu anhu, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا ركع فرج أصابعه. That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he bowed to make ruku', he would separate or spread his fingers, which would make number 18. And of course, those are only 18 what? Examples. It doesn't stop there. There are more, but the Sheikh stopped there and suffice with that. So inshallah, we'll stop there unless there are any questions. Yes, inshallah. Again, it shouldn't be that we use these things as a easy way out not to do something, but we should use them and make sure we're benefiting from them in life, in real life. Yes.
So earlier in the recommended acts 9 and 10, spoke about sitting in accordance how you should sit.
Yes.
You mentioned sitting on your left foot with your right foot propped up for the first tashahhud. For the last tashahhud, sitting on your butt with your legs overlapping. What's the best thing to do for Salat al-Fajr?
Well, let's look at the text. Right? I'm not going to answer that. Right. It says, number 9. You reading it? You got it?
That's the method.
Okay. Number 9 says, sitting, mafrosha. It says here, muftarishan. In the first tashahhud, in between the two prostrations, right? For the first one. The first tashahhud has a sitting. Tayyib. Number 10. The Shaykh Rahimahullah said, sitting tawarruk in the final tashahhud of the prayers with 3 and 4 rakat, which is to sit on the buttocks while placing the left foot under the right foot with the right foot erect. Salat al-Fajr has how many tashahhuds? Is that the first or the last? Is that the question? Allah Alam. Allah Alam. I would consider that the last tashahhud of the Salat al-Fajr. Wallahu Alam. Wallahu Alam.
So we're going to be in
Next week we're going to do Kitab al-Siyam. We're going to start Kitab al-Siyam, the book of fasting, hopefully, inshallah. Ramadan is approximately 6 weeks, I think, with next week. I don't know about that. Maybe Dalil al-Talib, maybe Dalil al-Talib, I think. And then when we come after that, because by the time we finish Kitab al-Siyam, the chapter of fasting, it'll be Ramadan, inshallah. And we won't start this book until after Ramadan. We won't come back to this until after Ramadan. More than likely, we'll probably do something else during Ramadan, something short, concise, related to Ramadan, fasting and stuff. So we'll stop this today, inshallah. Next week, we'll do Kitab al-Siyam, the book of fasting, in preparation for Ramadan. And then we'll return back, more than likely, to this book after Ramadan with Mubtilat al-Salat. Mubtilat al-Salat, the things that break the Salat. Things that break the Salat. And this book is, inshallah, we'll do that. Inshallah, yes. Demonstrate what?
sittings.
The 2 sittings.
Now I can get to my camera.
I guess. Oh, demonstrate on the camera.
Oh, I don't know how it's gonna work.
I know I was going to work. Ready?
Oh, yeah. And then we'll stop with that since they're gonna put me to work. So yeah, we demonstrate the first one and the second one, and I'll leave it like that: the first sitting and the second sitting. You could have left it on there. Just you can just pull the whole thing. It's probably easy. I'm gonna come right here. This is the first one. The first sitting. The first one is like this. This is the first one. As you sit on the left, and the foot is like that. So yeah, that's the first one. The first one shut. After the first 2 rakat, you go on the outside. The last sitting is that a person sits like this. They sit all the way over here. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes they go all the way down. Like this. So if the toes are still facing the tip, when you see people leaning, if you're able to do it, I gotta do it. I can't do it no more. All right, but this is what it should look like. And this is what it looks like. The person is leaning over to the left, and they still shut it over. Later. Boy, you next time I should have had you.
I wasn't gonna play. I was gonna be I just get over work.
I mean, no, the foot goes under. Like that? Oh, like that right there? To what foot?
Yeah. So,
G. It's still called tawarruk though, right?
yeah.
If you can do it, alhamdulillah, man. Sometimes, Allah understand. We'll stop there, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
That's when we just get off of work.